I am Eusebio Rubio Aureoles, and I thank you very much for the invitation to this very important symposium, which relates the sexual health assessment practice and experiences survey that was proposed by WHO. Thanks to Pedro Nobre and thanks to Lilian Gonzalez, who were responsible for these efforts. As the title announces, I am going to report what is the results of the Mexican experience, an effort undertaken by the Asociación Mexicana para la Salud Sexual. And I thank my collaborators, Alicia Rojas Flores and Verónica Delgado Parra, with whom we developed the efforts and the analysis that I will share with you. As you know, and this has been referred in several other presentations, this questionnaire was published by WHO in 2023. Our association undertook an unfunded project. We couldn't find resources, but we did what we could, and I am going to share with you what we could produce. And with the questionnaire, we translated and then we field tested with participants, mostly AMSSAC students. And then we used the social media with several posts with a modest Facebook promotion. And I am using some examples of this promotion to see you. The outline of the presentation is presented here. We will cover these topics one by one, and I will not mention them now in order to enter into detail. Who answered the survey sample considerations? The survey was answered by 3,500 to 6 participants of a great age range, more women than men, and a considerable proportion of non-hetero and non-cis persons consisted the audience who participated. Here is the age distribution, and the mean was 37.7 years, and the mean 36. It was a young population, but with a lot of spreading of the distribution. And we asked, or the survey asked for the perceived gender. Most people participated were women, men also, but interesting and in significant number, 606 identify themselves as other, and just using some of the most frequent terms in Spanish, because the survey and everything was produced in Spanish. And I ask for your consideration because some of the slides I am presenting are still with the Spanish. Another interesting fact of the sample produced was that of the 3,000 participants who responded to the question, what do you consider yourself, asking about sexual orientation, almost 30% identify themselves with other labels different than heterosexual and homosexual. A great variety of them, some of them are identified there in a great variety of options that people choose. The age difference between the different populations we checked, and there was not a big difference. There was a significant statistical difference, but this is because it was a very large sample. The females were younger. The people who identified themselves as homosexual or other sexual orientation were also younger, and this difference was slightly more significant. What about the sexual experiences of the reporters? So the age of first sexual experience was not different than other national studies. Difference between genders and sexual orientations were present, but were small. And this is part of what was relatively interesting in these findings. The age in which the first sexual experience was reported was with a mean of 18 years and a median of 18, and also a mode of 18. You can see the distribution there. The comparison between different categories are interesting. Males are slightly older, but this difference was very, very small. It was significant, but the effect size of this difference was very, very small, almost non-existent. And then the comparison between heterosexual and homosexual respondents also revealed a significant difference. In this case, it was slightly more important, the effect, but still the difference was not very important. So the differences between these two populations are not so big. This slide shows also these differences by group, males, females, and the blue ones are heterosexuals, and the yellow ones homosexuals and other orientations, and the belonging to a minority orientation, which, as you see, is not too much of a minority now, in this survey, revealed a younger age in general. Then we did an analysis of the first sexual experience, dividing the population by age groups. And we found a very interesting pattern with the older population, that's the group to the end of the graph, older than 65, or having it relatively younger, 18-something as a mean. It is reported the mean and the confidence interval there. And then you see an increase in the age of the first sexual experience, which stops in the age group of 46 to 50. And then a decline, and then we tested this curious distribution of the age of the first sexual experience, and it was significant. We tested with an ANOVA, and you can see the results there. This is interesting. This trend was reported before, and perhaps, I don't know, this one study is not enough, but perhaps this signals that the trend of increasing the age of first sexual interaction has modified. The gender in which the sexual interaction occurred the first time, it was frequently not corresponding to the reported sexual orientation, and this is perhaps the most interesting finding. It is slightly complicated to show you these numbers, because the number of questions that were presented were high. Here are the questions. And the most frequent first sexual experiences occurred in the first category. I have had sexual experience only with men, never with women. That was the more frequent. But the reason for that is that most participants were women. So that is an explanation. But what is not so easy to explain is the second option, which is almost 90% of participants, 619. I have had sexual experience mainly with men, but at least once with a woman. So the following slides attempt to explain these curious facts, and it is very interesting. This is the same information, but in a graphic form. The three first or most common responses with this gender of person with whom we had the sexual experiences have occurred. And then we did an analysis of some of these. We did of all, but I am reporting some of these options. For instance, those who responded only with males and never with females were, interestingly, mostly female heterosexuals. That was the most frequent response. But then what it is very interesting is the other the categories where this was not consistent. For instance, women who identified themselves as homosexuals, a significant number, 122, reported that they had sexual experience only with male and never with females. That's interesting. And that pattern repeated itself several times. This is females that never have experiences with males, with females. That is, females are partner and never with males. So most responded, it logically is heterosexual men. But interestingly, the homosexual the homosexual men have had experiences, some of a small proportion, but nevertheless. So this trend that it's also shown mostly with males and at least once with a female, it's also very interesting. And look, this shows very clear that the females, the women who responded, showed a very diverse and it's kind of open exploration of sexual experiences with a number of partners. Mostly with females, and at least one with a female. It follows the same pattern. And you see also interesting, for instance, homosexual men that had only, they identify themselves as homosexual, but they had experiences only with females. Okay, the number of sexual partners reported and the frequency of sex are presented in the next slide. The range of numbers of sexual partners was large, but the majority reported between 4 and 6. The median of sexual experience was in the last 4 weeks was 3. So this is just a picture of how the differences are. Interestingly, considered as a group, females reported a median of 6 men as partners, while men reported a median of 4 women as partners. So that's an interesting finding. The frequency of sex in the last 4 weeks, the mean was 5.09, and the median was 3. So that's just, and we did the same checking of differences in age groups, and we found that there was no effect there. Okay, sexual practices reported. This is very interesting, but not very surprising. Most sexual practices were reported with very high frequency, many of them nearly universal. So I will go very fast. This is active oral sex, 96%. The small figures are the other groups. In some cases, the homosexual population and the other heterosexual. This is receptive oral sex. This is penile vaginal intercourse. Interestingly, the homosexual group had lower numbers, but they all have very, very frequent. Sexual practices, anal intercourse, becoming very, very popular among all groups. And masturbation, practically universal. And 2 last pieces of information. Level of sexual satisfaction, this was only one question, and the reported sexual satisfaction was high or very high. This is the graph, and this is the ones who responded. On the top are the men, and then the women, and most of them, as you can see, very high levels of sexual satisfaction. And then sexual violence reported. This was, we analyzed only one question, but this was reported by more than 50% of participants identified as women and 30% of those identified as men. Very high levels of sexual violence, as you can expect, that those are the men and those are the women. And, okay, concluding. The shape applied in Mexico provides information about the current practices and experiences of those who responded. The sample is large. It gives an idea. It is not representative because I already explained the way in which we gather the sample, but nevertheless, it gives interesting information. Especially the large sample gives us some idea, especially when you found the same result that gives confidence, which is the case with the age of first sexual intercourse and things like that. That replicates the already found information with representative samples. But the value of this survey is the possibility of comparison between the groups, between the non-diverse and diverse populations. And we found that the differences encountered are very small. That is another interesting finding. And finally, the SHAPE database provides still a large opportunity to further study the variables, because we are just presenting the practices and experiences, and then there is a lot of connections between many of the variables presented. And for that reason, we are really offering from the beginning the database, any group who is interested in further analyze these results that we were able to gather. And with this, I thank very much with our participation and the opportunity to share with you, even though it was not possible to be in presence, but I am very glad we could find the opportunity to, through these electronic possibilities, share with you what we did in these last months. Thank you very much.